What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 24 of Into the Necrosphere. My name is Jackie Smith, your host, as always. It is colder than a witch's tit outside, which means that the temperature and the weather is right for talking about black metal. Today, I'm going to be continuing my countdown of my favorite 50 black metal bands, and I call this 2020 edition because, like I've said many times, this genre changes so quickly, and there are so many great new bands that come onto the scene all the time that it would be next to impossible, in my opinion, to pull together a best list of all time. And speaking of great new bands, next week I'm going to be taking a pause for the cause as far as this countdown is concerned, because I'm going to be talking to Ragnar of a really cool band out of Iceland called Hellfro. I heard a couple of advanced tracks of the album that they're about to put out on Season of Mist, and when the opportunity came around for me to interview them, I jumped on that shit like stink on a monkey. And shout out to Jessica and Letitia from Season of Mist for being absolute pros and getting that set up for me. But really looking forward to doing that conversation or doing that interview next week and sharing it with you guys the week after or next week by the time that you watch this. What else is coming up today? So we're going to be talking about numbers 40 through to 31 this week. Last week we did 50 through to 41. I'll recap after the intro as well exactly what the tally was in case you missed episode 23. And if you missed episode 23, the wonderful news is that you can go back on all of the wonderful platforms that carry us, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and you can check it out. And you can also check out the vast treasure trove of fucking great interviews and episodes that I have done to date, including interviews with my friend Liorcifer, the world famous tattoo artist, AV from Abduction, Sam Loynes from Antichrist Imperium and Akrakoka, Matt Wilcock also of Antichrist Imperium, Jason Mendonça of Akrakoka. I mean, Jesus. There are more fucking great bands on Into the Necrosphere than there ever has been anywhere else on the face of the earth. If all I ask in return is that you subscribe and that you share my content with your friends, family, and loved ones, particularly your elderly relatives, and that if you are checking us out on YouTube, you leave a comment and a like. I got my first 2 thumbs downs on YouTube not too long ago. So whoever gave me those 2 thumbs downs, fuck you. Right, guys, let's do this shit. So before we get to number 40, let's recap a couple of things. First and foremost, let's talk about the criteria for coming on to the venerated list of my favorite 50 black metal bands. Key criteria number 1, how much do I actually enjoy the band? How often do I listen to them? Number 2, how consistent have they been over the course of their discography? Number 3, how much of an impact did they have on my own personal taste and my own personal musical development? Last week I said I did mention number 4 or a number 4, and I said I was taking into account genre impact as well. But the more I've been thinking about that, the less I give a shit. So I can give you a couple of spoilers. There are quite a few bands, including Dissection, Watain, Bathory, and Celtic Frost, that are not on this list. And it's not to say that I think they're garbage, but the bands that are on this list, I just happen to like a lot more, and I happen to listen to a lot more. So if we recap my top or the 50 through to 41 from last week, at number 50 I had Above Aurora. At number 49 I had Dark Fortress. At number 48 I had Sonic Rain. At number 47, I had Triptychon. At number 46, I had Craft. At number 45, I had Dimmu Borgir. At number 44, I had Tarka. At number 43, I had Crimson Throne. And I've been exchanging messages with Tom from Crimson Throne for a while now about him coming on the show for an interview. And he's gone quiet on me again for some reason. So, Tom, I really hope that you are not big-timing me as far as coming on the show is concerned. You don't strike me as a dude that would, but right now, the evidence paints a bleak picture. Anyway, number 42, Drudka. And then at number 41, Samael, a band who rose very high with their first 3 records and then landed face down in a steaming pile of fucking horseshit for the rest of their career. Anyway, that brings us on to this week. So at number 40, Campfire, veterans out of Norway. They started in 1994. They have put out 7 albums. They're part of that second wave of Norwegian black metal that was inspired by No Doubt, but didn't participate in any of the church burning, murdering, crazy bullshit that some of the forebearers of the genre indulged in. And actually, Campfire also, to be fair, didn't really go for the whole kind of satanic thing. Their name apparently is an ancient Norse battle cry for Odin. And most of their themes, their lyrics, the imagery around the band is all kind of focused around Norwegian folklore, war. They've also had a very surprisingly stable lineup. I think they only ever actually changed guitarists back in 2011. And I would suggest that this is probably why they continue to go from strength to strength right up into last year's Ophidion's Manifest, or Ophidion's, yeah, it is Ophidion's Manifest. I was just worried about, I'm trying my best not to butcher names as badly as I've done on some of the past episodes, but, it's not always possible. Like I've said to these fucking people, start speaking English. Anyway, but yeah, Ophidion's Manifest, that appeared on Into the Necrosphere's top 20 of 2019. So here's another feather in their cap. They are number 40 on my list of my 50 favorite black metal bands. And I am going to play a song off Ophidion's Manifest right now. This is called Cinderfall.
Våre fetter
At number 39 is another one of my favorite UK black metal bands. The creator and frontman of the band, AV, has been on the show. And if that name rings a bell, you'll know who I'm talking about. I am referring, of course, to Abduction out of Derbyshire in the UK. Abduction started as a one-man project by AV, and he has since, I think last year, started putting together some session players, pulled together a live band. The live shows, by all account, are fucking cool, even though it's one of those bands I continue to miss for some insane reason every time that they play in London. I will change that in the very near future. But regardless, Abduction for me, along with Crimson Throne, are definitely one of the best new UK black metal bands around. Abduction has been around for about 4 or 5 years. AV has put out 3 records during that time. Of those, in my opinion, without a shadow of a doubt, the best of the bunch is All Pain is Penance, which was released last year on, I think it was Inferno Productions, and I think the vinyl came out on Apocalyptic Witchcraft. But, if you've not checked them out yet, and you like black metal that is harsh, chaotic, aggressive, but just packed with atmosphere, this is a band that you absolutely cannot ignore. And we will have AV back on the show again at some point. But for now, I am going to crank out one of my very favorite Abduction tracks. I think I have played this on earlier episodes, but it's worth hearing it again. This song is called Convulsing at Baalbek. That was Convulsing at Baalbek by Abduction. Like I said, one of my favorite of the new generation of UK black metal bands, whose numbers seem to be growing all the time as well. I heard a band the other day called Anti-Inferno, which is just fucking spectacular. And it really re-emphasizes the point that I made on episode 23 when I spoke about this list and you know why I said this is the 2020 edition, and that's because most likely by next year this time, the numbers would have changed quite dramatically. Now, one number that is very unlikely to change is number 38, Galsverd. And if you don't know who Gal is, you are a poser, and you don't probably listen to black metal, and you shouldn't be listening to this podcast any longer. Gal, of course, is a guy who is infamous in the black metal scene. He's been around for quite some time, played with Gorgoroth, Trelldom, Godseed, a very intense, very unique individual who disappeared for, I'd say, a couple of years from the black metal scene. At least he wasn't as prolific as he was in the sort of Godseed, Gorgoroth era. And I know he wanted to focus on his career and on his art outside of music. But last year, he came back with a record called Ghosts Invited that, in my view, was so spectacular that it really demands the group's inclusion on this list. And I really do hope that this isn't just a one-off. I've looked around to see whether or not there is talk of another album. Apparently, as I said, I couldn't pick up anything about that, but I have noticed that they are doing a lot of touring and playing a lot of live shows, and from YouTube, all of that looks really, really cool. But Ghosts Invited as an album itself, and the reason why they're so high up on this list is just one of the most immersive, addicting, and one of the deepest records I think I've ever heard. It's progressive, it's atmospheric, it's dark. It's not typical textbook black metal. For one thing, Gal's vocal approach is completely different to anything he's done on any other record. But on the main, it is just absolutely spectacular from start to finish. A 10 out of 10 album, in my opinion. So I'm going to play one of my favorite songs off Ghost Invited. This is a song called The Speech and the Self. coming in at number 37 on my countdown of my favorite 50 black metal bands. A band called Leviathan. Now, if you look up Leviathan on Metal Encyclopedia, it may be amongst the most overused names for metal bands. There are 39 entries on Metal Encyclopedia. I am referring to the US-based solo black metal project by a naughty boy named Jeff Whitehead, who plays under the stage name Rest. I say naughty because Jeff has had some legal troubles, although in his defense, he was found not guilty on all but one charge. And it sounds, if I read between the lines, I mean, I don't know everything about it, but it sounds like some of this might have been down to a disgruntled lover who decided to take revenge on him, and he even wrote an album about it under the Leviathan moniker called True Traitor, True Whore. But Leviathan are actually best known for the 2003 release, the 10th Sublevel of Suicide. And if you look up best black metal on the internet, then quite a lot of those lists of greatest black metal albums of all time will have that record on there. My personal favorite is actually an album that Leviathan put out in 2015 called Scar-Sighted. And it was the last full length that's gone out under the Leviathan name. They have done, or I should say, Jeff has done several splits and an EP after that. But like I said, this was the last full length. A fantastic record, and one of those albums that really kind of demands to be listened to end to end. But I don't have time to play you a 53-minute album, so I will play you instead one of my favorite songs off the record. This is called Wicked Fields of Calm. number 36, out of Lithuania, a four-piece called Audacious. There seem to be a number of emerging countries in the black metal scene. Iceland is one. I mentioned Helfro earlier on. And then Lithuania seems to be another. And in the Lithuanian scene, Audacious is almost without a shadow of a doubt my favorite. They started in 2014. They released an EP and they put out a full length in 2017 called End of Chapter. That came out on a French label whose name I cannot and will not attempt to pronounce. I do know that they are currently preparing their next record, and what really, really strikes me about these guys is just how mature and how polished their sound is for a band who's not only young in terms of how long they've been playing together, but they're also really, really young in terms of their actual age. I mean, I don't know for sure, but just having seen one of their music videos, I mean, the guys look like they're about 18 or 19 years old. So for them to have put together a record that is as polished, and as well written, recorded, and structured as End of Chapter is nothing short of unbelievable. I am going to say no more and let the music speak for itself. This is the first track off that record. It is a song called Six. number 35, Outer from Poland. They've been around since 2012. They put out their debut record, Ghost Chance, in 2015. That came out on a small label called Third Eye Temple. It's an album that I really liked at the time. But it is absolutely nothing in comparison to their sophomore release, which they put out in 2018. That was Hollow Earth. It's an album that I have spoken about on this record or on this show before. I've actually played some songs of it before as well, as far as I know. It came out on Debomur Morty Records, which I think they also do Bloodhouse Nort. And in a word, it is absolutely fucking crushing. I mean, when you listen to it, this record is heavier than the vast majority of death metal, but it really still retains that dark, misanthropic black metal aesthetic. There's a real kind of twisted sense of melody, a real willingness to experiment, and probably what earns them even more kudos in my mind is that in their bio, they actually describe their music as spitting in the face of anyone who attempts to beautify black metal. Now, for me, I fucking love that. I remember talking to Morgan from Marduk for Chronicles of Chaos a couple of years ago, and the one thing that he said to me was, and this was around the time I think Romans 5:12 came out, and we were talking just about generally kind of how aggressive Marduk's music was, and he was like, well, black metal needs to be about a fist in the face of God, not sitting by the side of the lake looking sad, which I just fucking absolutely loved. And it's part of why I love Marduk so much. It's also why I love Outer so much. Again, one of those bands that I just cannot recommend highly enough. And I do feel like they really have been overlooked. And I hope that's not going to continue. I know they're going to be putting out a new album at some point soon. I hope that is this year, although I'm not entirely sure. But I will leave you with this track. It is called Let the Earth Be Silent. Moving on to number 34, a band out of Venezuela called Selbst, a duo actually who have been around since 2010. They have put out a couple of splits with various bands and then an EP, and then they put out their self-titled debut, which I think they re-released last year. Originally, the self-titled debut came out in 2017, re-released last year. The enigmatically named N handles the majority of songwriting and instrumental duties, but I have actually been in contact with him on Facebook. He just calls himself Selbst, and we are going to have him on the show in the next couple of months. They're actually recording their new album as we speak. But yes, who would have thought that black metal this good could come out of Venezuela? I mean, I have no ill will towards the Venezuelan people. I do have quite a significant amount of ill will against the government. But like I've said before, this is not a political show, so I won't rant on for the next 25 minutes about how much I'd fucking despise and hate socialism and communism. But I know, regardless of all of that bullshit, I know that it's a challenging time in Venezuela for those guys. So, possibly out of challenging time has come fantastic art. Like I said, the self-titled debut is out, and it's well worth your time. They are working on a new record. They put out a single last year, which was a cover of a song by a band. I must admit, I've not actually heard of the band before, which may hurt my cult credentials. The band was called Hiralorn. The song is called "The Guardian of the Final Plague."
Future
Number 33, Krater out of Germany. They were, without a doubt, one of my favorite discoveries of last year. And I don't know how I missed them, to be honest. They have been active since 2003. They have put out only 4 albums in that time, which doesn't make them the most active or busiest band, but all 4 records are fucking fantastic. And they're one of those bands that continue to evolve and continue to improve with every record. They put out a record called Vinnanar last year, and that featured prominently once again on the Into the Necrosphere Top 20 of 2019. One of the things that I really love about Krater is that they are not afraid to color outside of the lines of what could be considered true TRVE black metal. And really, in my view, it makes them more effective for it, because they do they experiment a lot, but they kind of have enough of an understanding and I guess enough respect for black metal fundamentals to sort of keep them on track, and really the outcome of that is, in my view, some of the most aggressive and hateful music that you'll find in black metal this side of an Anal Nathrak album. I'm going to play a song off their 3rd record now. The 3rd record was called Urer, and this song is called Flammum in Vacuum. Flammem im Vacuum by Krater, and that brings us up to number 32, another German entry, and another chance discovery. This was one of those bands that I think I was listening to some stuff on Black Metal Promotion, and it actually went off the channel and started playing a few other stuff. Much of it was shit, and then all of a sudden, this band starts playing, and my jaw just hit the floor. The band is called Farsot. They have been active since 1999, although weirdly enough, only put out 3 records so far. Again, though, not a single one of those has been less than outstanding. Their crowning achievement, in my opinion, came out in 2017. It's a record called Failure, which was put out by Lupus Lounge. It is incredibly well produced. You guys know that with the audiophile malarkey that I'm into, I'm a sucker for well produced bands or well produced music. It is unbelievably well performed, but as much as it has a lot of polish, definitely do not mistake the polish for a lack of grit. This is really aggressive, really progressive. It is brimming with atmosphere. Again, Farsot is another of those bands that I cannot recommend to anybody highly enough. And I would say, for anybody who doesn't know black metal, this is definitely one of those bands I would suggest. Like if you had to put together a list of 5 bands to say, this is a good introduction, or this is a good way to ease yourself into black metal, I think Farsot would be one, as far as I'm concerned. This is a track off of Failure called The Agonist. Sorry, it's not The Agonist. It's The Antagonist. And just because I want to keep it real, I'm not going to bother editing that out. So it's staying as it is. This song is called The Antagonist. So before we get to the final band of today's countdown, let's run very quickly through numbers 40 to 32. At number 40, I had Campfire. At number 39, I had Abduction. At number 38, I had Goldsverd. At number 37, I had Leviathan. At number 36, Audacious. At number 35, Outer. I have to say about Outer, if they bring out another album like Hollow Earth, they move up to number 15 at the very least. At number 34, Selbst. At number 33, Krater out of Germany. Another German entry at number 32, Farsot. Curious to see if Marco from Stellar Master Elite gives me any static over the inclusion of those two. And then that brings me to number 31, and the last song of this edition of my favorite 50 black metal bands. I had to use the Metal Encyclopedia rule to confirm their presence. And actually, I'm just remembering now, I didn't mention the Metal Encyclopedia rule at the start of this episode. I did mention it in episode 23, but just in case you missed that. So anytime that there was any doubt over whether or not a band needed to be included, like, you know, if there was an argument over whether they're more death metal or whether they're more progressive metal or whatever the fuck, I used a Metal Encyclopedia, and if Metal Encyclopedia called them black metal, they made it to the list. If Metal Encyclopedia called them blackened death metal, they made it onto the list. And that is the case in this instance. And I can give you probably three guesses, and about 98% of you will guess it right the first time. I'm talking about Behemoth. Now, anyway, I mean, as far as Behemoth is concerned, whether or not they are, you know, black metal now is probably up to interpretation. They definitely started off as a black metal band. I think some of their finest moments owe more to the black metal genre than it does to death metal. And when I say finest moments, you know, I did like a lot of their early stuff. I mean, I remember hearing them on a Nuclear Blast soundcheck compilation, and this was fucking ages ago. And around the time, I think that they were bringing out some of their very first stuff. Just checking the date now, I think it was around the time the Grom came out. And that was very cool. And then they sort of gradually progressed and developed. They really, really sort of caught my attention again with Telema 6. I really liked Zoskia Cultus. I liked Demigod. I liked the Apostasy. And actually, I think I would say for me, the peak of this band was the Apostasy. And actually, I'm going to be playing a song in a second off the Apostasy. I will controversially say I didn't think that The Satanist was very good. I know that a lot of people think it's great, and fucking horseshit Metal Hammer said it's the best album of all. I think it was either Metal Hammer or Karap that called it the best metal album of all time or the best metal album of the decade. I don't agree with that. I think it's, like I said, I think it's dull. But I did think that I Loved You at Your Darkest, got them back on track. With the exception of those fucking irritating kids that they have right at the start of, what is the song? I think it was God Equals Dog, which is a moronic name for a song as well. But anyway, that's beside the point. But just those fucking orphans at the beginning of the song going, Jesus Christ, I forgive thee not. It's the lamest thing I've ever heard. But it also says a lot about how good the rest of the album is, that I could forgive that and really enjoy that record. But anyway, in my view, Behemoth thoroughly deserve the spot off the strength of all of those records up to and including Demigod. Nurgle is an interesting cat. I actually met him. I'm trying to think now. I think it was around Zoskia Cultus or Demigod, and I always thought he was a very cool dude. Some of his antics recently, I think, are lame, but, again, that's beside the point. You can't be a complete and utter turd if you can write a song as absolutely badass as my favorite Behemoth song of all time, off of the Apostasy, and this is going to be the last song of this episode. This is a track called At the Left Hand of God. That was Behemoth with At the Left Hand of God, number 31 on my list of my top 50 favorite black metal bands. And it brings us to the end of the second part of my 5-part marathon, the highly anticipated, long-awaited, and sure to be debated list of my favorite black metal bands. I hope that you guys have enjoyed that. Let me know what you think of the bands that I've included. And let me know who your favorite black metal bands are, because who knows, I might discover some more bands that I didn't know about before, which again, as I said, is what these lists are all about. And remember that you can follow the show on Into the Necrosphere at Into the Necrosphere on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So do it. It's been a cool week for me actually. On Tuesday, and I might when I edit this video together, or sorry, when I edit this episode together, I should say, I might include some a clip from the actual show. But on Tuesday, I went to see Malevolent Creation, and as some of you may know, my buddy Lee Vollenschlager is the frontman now. Lee's a guy that I met when I was 12 years old. And he and I, reminisced at length about what it was like growing up in South Africa and, being a metalhead in South Africa. And it was just so cool to see him on stage after, knowing him for 28 years and knowing how much of a dream it was for him to play in a band. And then seeing him on stage with a band that, we all grew up listening to. And I still remember the days when we got hold of the Eternal CD, and that second track, Blood Brothers, with the, I think it was Dave Coolross who drummed on that album. This crazy double bass bit in the start and then just this fucking crushing riff coming in. Yeah, really, really cool seeing him play with them and seeing his dream realized. And for everybody who was there, I'm sure they felt the same. The crowd seemed really into it. I didn't stay for Batushka. And spoiler alert, Batushka is not on my list of favorite black metal bands because I think they're fucking overrated. Anyway, what else do I have to say? I don't actually know how many people stick around for the very end of the show. So I'm just going to rant on and talk about whatever I want. As you can see, once again, I'm flying the AEW colors. I was obsessed with wrestling when I was young. And to such a degree that my university dissertation when I got my business degree was about the use of integrated marketing in the WWF. I was fucking desperate to work for them as a company as well. Nowadays, or I would not even say nowadays, I'd say probably for the last 15 years, I've thought the WWE were absolutely atrocious. They have destroyed the thing that I used to love. And then along comes AEW, and they have managed to somehow resurrect my love for professional wrestling, in part because Chris Jericho is one of the fucking funniest human beings I've ever seen in my entire life. But I mean, they're so cool that even John Moxley, the sort of main babyface, is entertaining. So if you ever liked pro wrestling and you sort of fell out of love with it, which I'm pretty sure most people of my age and my mindset did, then I can most definitely suggest that you check out AEW because you will relive your youth, if nothing else. What else is going on? This weekend, there is the Yoel Romero Israel Adesanya fight, UFC 248. And then also, I think her name's pronounced Zhang Wei Li, the UFC featherweight champion, taking on Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who is superb. But Li seems like she is just a fucking Terminator. I was watching the countdown video, and the way that woman just was manhandling the fucking punch bag made me fear for sweet, beautiful Joanna's face. Then again, though, it would be turnabout being fair play because Joanna has messed a few bitches up in her day as well. And then what else can I tell you guys? In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be fucking off to South Africa for a couple of weeks. I think 3.5 weeks, as a matter of fact. I'm going to try and bank as many episodes as I can and then schedule and release them over or during the time that I'm away. But I must be very honest with you. I was trying to kind of plan out in my mind today how much I'm going to get done before I go. And in all seriousness, I think there's probably going to be about 2-3 weeks of downtime. But such is life. I know that you guys will struggle. But the good news is that I will be back next week. And I'll be back talking to Ragnar from Hellfro. I'm really excited about that conversation. I'm really excited about Hellfro. They are along with Blaze of Perdition. They might be one of the sort of first big, really exciting releases as far as black metal are concerned this year. And it's going to be fun finding out more about the scene in Iceland, which somehow seems to have sort of passed me by. Quite a few people have been mentioning Sin Mara to me recently, and I will check that out. But it's all of a sudden just a couple of bands out of Iceland seem to popping up, and they're all really cool. So we'll see what Ragnar has to say for himself. And like I said, I'll get Marco from Stellar Master Elite on here probably for the next countdown. We've actually been exchanging messages, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me see if I can get hold of him on the phone, and then we can. We might have a special moment here, but if this motherfucker will just fuck. Right, there we go. All right. So let's see if I can get him on the phone, and then he can explain himself, explain why he gave me so much shit about liking about liking Dark Fortress. Just so you guys know, I'm not actually bullshitting. There we go. Nah. Looks like the man's busy. Anyway, as I said, he'll be on here, and he will answer for his fucking insolence. Anyway, that is me done for this week. Thank you so much for checking out the show. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I know I say it every week, but I genuinely do appreciate all of the support, and I appreciate all of the really cool folks that I have met as I've been doing the show. I hope that you will tune in again next week. Remember, you can find the show on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Castbox, TuneIn Radio, and all sorts of cool shit. And I hope that you guys have a great week. From the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, I'm bidding you a fond farewell.